But I would say that there has been no randomized control trial that I know of that shows a statistically significant difference between either the control group or sham group and the augmented vertebrae. So let me repeat that. There has been no trial that has demonstrated a difference. And what that likely means is that there is a component of natural history involved in the development of additional fractures. I think that that's important because that is a question that comes up quite a bit with our clinical colleagues from rheumatology or from endocrinology. I know you mentioned there were 4 people in the queue, so I'll be quiet again.
Thank you. Operator, I think we can go to the next questioner or commenter.
And your next question comes from Deborah Tracy.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Oh, okay. My name is Dr. Deborah Tracy. I practice in Florida in the J9 jurisdiction. I've been a CAC member since 2007. I am board certified in anesthesiology, subspecialty certified in interventional pain, fellowship trained in interventional pain by 3 separate organizations, including the American Board of Anesthesiology. I trained in vertebroplasty in 1999 and since then have done thousands of vertebroplasty and kyphoplasty, and my practice is 90% Medicare. I practice in Hernando County, which is one of the top counties for Medicare per capita, and the hospital I practice in is a 350-bed hospital that is 80% Medicare. So I would like to address the neurologist question.
Do you have any conflict of interest that are relevant?
I do teach for the Stryker company maybe 1 to 3 times a year, and that involves teaching other doctors how to do the procedure. Is that adequate, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. I would like to address the neurologist comment, and for this problem, what we're dealing with is the sedentary restrictions of having a vertebral compression fracture. And this is outside the domain of the literature that we have been reviewing, but we know from other literature in the osteoporotic literature that bone density declines 2% per week with bone loss, most dramatic in the first 12 weeks for patients 70, 80, and 90 years old. Muscle strength declines 1 to 3% per day, 10 to 15% per week to half normal strength at 3 to 5 weeks. And the patients are at risk of developing pressure sores. They have side effects from opioid analgesics. As they develop a kyphosis, they develop rib crowding, decreased lung capacity, and their sedentary lifestyle can lead to DVT, pulmonary embolism, and pneumonia. So I hope that for the neurologist who asked the question, that answers it. Additionally, the vertebroplasty procedure is basically putting a needle through the pedicle. Most of us use the transpedicular approach, and then putting the cement in. The kyphoplasty procedure involves putting the needle in, then a drill to drill through perhaps sclerotic bone, then a balloon or a cavity cutter, and this has been suggested to decrease the incidence of extravasation because you're decreasing the pressure within the bone. And this is what results in the increased cost. So the vertebroplasty procedure basically would move forward a little faster than the kyphoplasty procedure, and the kyphoplasty procedure would be more costly because of the extra equipment used. In terms of what Dr. Beal commented on, I would further like to say that in the Buchbinder study of 2009, 67% of the patients came from a single site. I would wonder if the FDA would qualify this as a multi-center trial. And the primary variable was mean pain, not responder analysis. So I would question with the sample size they achieved if the FDA would require a responder analysis. So I think what Dr. Beal said was that to achieve a difference of 1 point from the mean either way, the sample size in the Buchbinder 2009 study would have to be 120 participants per group, and it was only 35 and 38 per group. So the means and the confidence levels are inadequate to determine the distribution of properties. Again, the sample size was too small, and I would like to refer you to the task force report, the second task force report of 2019. We have Dr. Buchbinder and Dr. Calmes as participants in that paper, and they do say pretty strongly that sample size is very important on page 7, bullet 2, and page 18. And they do say that the studies must have adequate power on page 7, bullet 9, and page 18. Yet there's no commentary or thoughtful commentary on the inadequacies of those papers that are referenced later in the task force paper that analyze how the literature should be provided. So I would wonder why they didn't reference the literature from 2009 as to its inadequacies. In terms of Dr. Barr's comments, I would totally agree with Dr. Barr. It's really hard to define a fracture. An acute fracture is something we never knew was there. It's acute. It has marrow edema. But what I see here in this patient, they can have a chronic fracture for years, and then it becomes acute on chronic, and it progresses. So another problem that's not addressed in the literature is does the stabilization of the bone and the stabilization of the height of the bone improve the patient's future in terms of progression of the fracture? In terms of our endocrinologist comment, our neuroendocrinologist, I think that's exactly right. One of the biggest problems in all the literature referenced is the homogeneity. And if further studies are recommended by the task force, I would recommend that the time of the fracture, the type, the integrity of the bone, if there's spinal stenosis, what I often see are people get a compression fracture fixed. If they come back and say, oh, my pain is worse than ever, I say, well, here's where we did that. Is this where it hurts? Oh, no, that pain's totally gone. Now I have pain in this place. So I think one of the other problems in the literature is that there are no efforts to determine when the pain scale doesn't decrease if they are comorbid spinal conditions that are at different sites, or, as Dr. Barr said, if there are progressing fractures. I saw an elderly lady who was in a motor vehicle accident. She had one single fracture, and we repaired that fracture, but she didn't get better. Well, we did an MRI within the 2 weeks of the repair, and there was a fracture above it. So I think that evolved in fraction, just fracture did not show itself until later on and was probably beginning to fracture at the point where I saw her. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't take too much time.
Dr. Tracy, one question. Do you think that in Virtus 4 the groups were homogeneous enough to compare to reach a good comparison? Right off, I could answer that question later, but at the moment there was so much literature, I really don't remember my opinion of that specific problem in that specific paper. But I can answer that at a later time for you. Okay, thank you. Operator, if we could go on to the next commenter.
And your next question complaint of Dr. Catherine Parks.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so I don't want to take up too much time. I am a pain doctor from Indiana, board certified in pain medicine, and I specialize in treatment of spine. I agree with all the comments that have been already made.
Any conflict of interest? Do you have any conflict of interest?
No, I have no conflict of interest at all. I'm in private practice.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
So I agree with all the comments that have been made in favor of vertebroplasty. And there was one short study that showed there was an adjacent fracture. The study was 78 people. I can't remember the name right now. There were 7 adjacent fractures that occurred after vertebroplasty. That's the only thing that I think I saw